right now, Michael, let's discuss some of these win totals courtesy of BetMGM. We have the most bet overs, the tickets, and the handle. We'll do the unders in the next segment here. But when you look at the ticket percentages, the most bet over is the New England Patriots at 7.5. Is that something that you agree with, Michael, here? With New England, they haven't been down this low in quite some time.
Well, I mean, look, there's always what fuels these over win totals is perception, right? So, when you look at the Detroit Lions, for example, everybody talks about the Lions being unbelievable, the second half of their season and how they're going to make the playoffs. Well, the Steelers had just as good a second half of the season as the Lions did.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Steelers went to Charlotte and really beat up on the Carolina Panthers, a team that Detroit gave up 350 yards. So perception rules, right? And there's a perception that New England is not very good. And that's pretty much a wrong perception. I mean, their defense is improved. And it was good last year. I mean, their defense, look at their numbers. Their defense was good. Their offense struggled. They could run the football. They turned the ball over way too much, not typical of a Belichick team. And they lost games that typically they don't lose. The Raider game with the ridiculous lateral. The Minnesota game with Pierre Strong doesn't block the guy on the punt. The Bengal game. I mean, the divisional Bengal game who almost beat Kansas City. They're going to go in there and beat them in that game. And Stevenson fumbles on the goal line going in. So there's 3 games that they had a chance to win, and yet they didn't. And that's their record. So the overreaction to me is really wrong. And I believe this: when you have a good defense and you can control the game defensively and you can run the football, which are those 2 things New England could do last year, you have a chance to be in every single game. Now, they're going to have a rookie kicker and a rookie punter. There's a lot of things that have to come together, starting with Mac Jones not turning the ball over. But it's all there for them.
To further your point about the defense, and this is not the most perfect way to measure it. It's a catch-all metric, but it factors in things like strength of schedule and all that stuff and who you're facing. And according to Football Outsiders, the analytics website, and the defensive DVOA, the number 1 team last year was the 49ers. Makes sense. Number 2 was the Dallas Cowboys. Like, those are 2 defenses that a lot of people have a lot of respect for. Number 3 was the New England Patriots. Like this is a really good defense, like you talked about.
Well, I mean, they were second in the league in creating turnovers, right? You couldn't run the football on them. They were 4th in the National Football League in yards per attempt on average, right? So they gave up the least amount of touchdown rushes in the league. And they were 5th in the league in first downs allowed. And this is coming off an offense that struggled to stay on the field, that struggled to score. And so I think, to me, that's going to only continue. And New England, where the reason they're not a playoff team is because they were 0-4 against teams that had quarterbacks that have movement in the pocket, starting with Chicago. They lose that game. They lose the Baltimore Ravens game. I mean, whenever they play a team that has a quarterback that can move around and create some issues, they didn't play well. They're addressing that with the speed of the defense, how they're aligning, and what they're trying to do is they play these RPO teams, and Miami be included in that 4. So they understand what's ahead of them, and I think people are overreacting to this, and people are piling on. I mean, think about this, Femi. Bill Belichick's got 6 Super Bowls. He's got 8 total as a coach, and he's on the hot seat. Meanwhile, Ron Rivera hasn't made the playoffs. He's got 3 winning seasons. I saw an article that he's a Hall of Fame coach.
What?
And yet he's not on the hot seat.
Who wrote that article?
It's I'm not going to.
Let's not name names.
I mean, seriously. So it's all perception based. I mean, if you're gonna buy what the media is selling you without peeling back the layers, this is why you have to look past it. This is why you have to understand the numbers. Now, look, New England has a tough schedule. There's no question about that. But New England's also got a good team, and they can match up.
The team that is 3rd in the ticket percentage and 3rd in the handle is a defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. And I just wanted to make this point, Michael, here before we moved on to some of the other teams. Since Andy Reid arrived in 2013, the Chiefs have gone over their win total every single year except for one.
Yeah.
That was 2021, where the win total was set at 12.5, and they won 12 games. This is a team that It's chalky. It's a high win total. It's sitting at 11.5. But over the last decade, if you've just gone to the window and said, "Give me the Chiefs over," man, you're swimming in cash.
Yeah, I don't see why they can't go. I know they play in a hard division. Look, they won a lot of close games last year, and Andy's teams are physically, mentally tough, so they're able to win close games. And he does a good job of closing out the game in the final 4 minutes. Andy's a little bit of a contrarian in terms of he will put the ball in his best player's hands, and even though he mismanages the clock at times, Mahomes or in the past Donovan McNabb have bailed him out, and his teams respond. So look, they'll play the Raiders. The Raiders will play them tough in both games. The Chargers will play them tough in both games, and Denver will play them tough in both games. And I think they'll find a way to come out on top of most of those games.
You mentioned the Denver Broncos. That's the second most bet team for ticket handle, or the ticket percentage, excuse me, is the Broncos at over 8.5 wins. Sean Payton, now the head coach there in Denver. There's maybe some quiet optimism about Russell Wilson. He's looking a little slimmer. He's getting in shape a little bit more. Are you buying the Kool-Aid out there in the Rocky Mountains?
Well, look, he's got a really good – Sean Payton can move the football, and he understands how to call plays. I think the real issue for us as fans and bettors when it comes to Russell Wilson is forget about the Ciara video that he's dancing in now. Forget that, right?
I didn't even
it's
see
about
that.
Will he stay in the pocket? Will he climb the pocket? Will he work the pocket? Last year he was quick to get out of the pocket, and pressure was really bothering him. And this is a concern with quarterbacks. It really is. One of the things you tell a quarterback is aging and not the same player is when he's reacting to tacklers that aren't there, when his eye level's down and he's looking around. So that was Russell last year. And for all the conversation about how bad the offense was, and it was, ranked 32nd in points scored in the league. They gained yards. They just turned the ball over. They were 26th in the league in creating and turning the ball over as an offensive team. So Sean will fix that. How much can he fix Russell? I think a lot of that's going to be determined by what he does in the first game when he gets hit and how he reacts to that contact.
Yeah, I think Russell, like you mentioned, like him getting a little bit in better shape, maybe that helps him be the Russell Wilson that we saw that's willing to run when the play breaks down, because we didn't see that a lot last year. And he looked kind of slow out there, which was surprising to see.
He can't escape.
Yeah.
Part of what he was able to do was escape, right?
Yep.
He could buy away. And when you don't work the pocket, when you don't climb the ladder in the pocket, and you start running sideways, the defensive lineman, if they could catch you, it's going to be an issue. And I think ultimately that's what happened to him.
Yeah.
Look, he just did not want to take the hits anymore. And look, it happens to every great quarterback. It's not the exception.
So the team with the most bet handle on the over, this is surprising to me at least, because I think every person who does betting content or every person who watches the NFL expects this team to sort of regress after what we saw last year, winning 13 games, winning the division. 9 of those 13 wins were one-score games. That's the most in NFL history, 9-0 in one-score games. It's the Minnesota Vikings. The handle. So not just the tickets. This is not Viking fans just running up there and betting their team over. This is the handle. So big money has come in on Minnesota's over at 8.5.
Well, look, are they going to go from a 13-win team to a 10-win team? I think that's the mindset here. I think the bettors see the 8.5 as a good number, especially considering that, like a lot of us, I don't think the betting public feels like Detroit is the elite team. There's no elite team in the North. So let's say they split. Let's say they get 3 wins, 4 wins in the North, right? And all of a sudden they only have to get 5 more wins in the rest of the games. Is that doable? Perhaps. Yeah. I don't love them, but I think, you can hate. I know you were up there, and you can hate the quarterback all you want, but the quarterback puts up pretty good numbers. He puts up pretty good numbers. I think the question mark is, can they win close games? I think the other thing is playing a first-place schedule. When they played Dallas, they got beat 40-3. When they played good teams, they struggled. They struggled. They lost to Green Bay 41-17 in Green Bay.
Yeah, and Detroit beat them up pretty good, too, in Detroit in that game where they couldn't stop that Lions offense. Defensively, though, we expect this team to be much better. Brian Flores now is a defensive coordinator. Although, like if Danielle Hunter, if he asks out and gets a trade, like they're losing too many pieces for my liking. And maybe they're just names.
I agree.
But yeah, it's.
But let's go over their year last year. The Miami game. If you watch the tape of that game, it's one of the most. They gave up 458 yards of. Now Miami turned it over 3 times.
Yeah.
Miami lost the game. I don't think Minnesota won that game. The same thing with Arizona. I mean, Arizona's turned the ball over 3 times in that game. They killed themselves. They beat Washington. They beat New England on the turnover game. They were creating turnovers as bad as they were on defense. They were incredible at creating turnovers. I mean, they were just so good in that area. And I think that's really what saved them. Can that happen again? I don't know.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.